You are now listening to Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet, a true crime podcast where cozy meets criminal, hosted by Jasmine C.L. Prince. Grab your yarn, pour up an iced coffee, let's sift through the chaos.
Prosecutors later revealed that Wade had both studied and planned how to kill and take the baby, indicating significant premeditation. She even told her friend she would name a daughter Genesis, spelled J. Welcome back. You are now listening to episode 6, oh my gosh, of Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet, a true crime podcast stitched together with soft chaos, iced coffee, and stories that deserve to be told. I'm your host, Jasmine C.L. Prince, and today's episode is part of a special observance, Black Maternal Health Week. Now, this week has passed, but because of technical difficulties that I was having, I wasn't able to get it out when I wanted to. However, I did not want to just scrap the episode altogether. So here we are. We are re-recording it, and I really want you all to just listen and take these cases and these stories in. We are doing our very best to honor both victims in today's stories. This is not a sensationalized one. It's not one that's going to be necessarily full of energy, because I do want to be respectful and respectful of both victims and their families. So we are diving into two heartbreaking true crime cases that reflect the often overlooked dangers Black women face during pregnancy, not just from the healthcare system, but from violence itself. During Black Maternal Health Week, I learned that the number one leading cause of death in Black women is actually not due to healthcare issues, but it's actually from gun violence. And so, as always, we are here to bring awareness, and I will be sipping on something cold and cozy and working on the crochet project that I'll be working on while we talk today. So grab your drink, find your calm, because you're going to need it, and let's get into it. So today's iced coffee moment is brought to you by Piper's Brew, where faith, motherhood, and coffee come together. Founded by a Christian mom, Piper's Brew donates 10% of profits to faith-based organizations supporting women and children. Now listen, earlier this week, or last week rather, I made a brown sugar and vanilla shaken espresso using their espresso blend, and that was my first time trying actual espresso, because usually I make the instant one, and I never knew that there would be so much of a difference between actual espresso and instant espresso. But y'all, if you've never tried real espresso, you need to. This blend was absolutely incredible. It was smooth, it was rich, it was strong. It was just, it took my coffee to a whole nother level. And I'm not just saying that because they're a sponsor. Like, I tried it first before I wanted to bring it to you all. So I'm telling you an honest opinion. It is amazing. So you can grab yours at pipersbrew.com, and don't forget to use the code BC310, the number 10, for 10% off. And then follow them on all their socials at Piper's Brew for more faith-fueled goodness. All right. And then, I got to give you a recipe. So the Faith Fuel Shaken Espresso featuring Piper's Brew Espresso. The ingredients you need are 2 shots of Piper's Brew Espresso, freshly brewed and cooled slightly, 1 tablespoon brown sugar syrup, or 1 tablespoon brown and a splash of hot water, a half teaspoon vanilla syrup, a whole lot of ice, and then a 1/4 cup, half and half oat milk or your milk of choice. And then if you want to be fancy, I always have to give y'all the fancy option, sprinkle some cinnamon or nutmeg for some extra cozy vibes. So the instructions: you're going to brew your Piper's Brew espresso and let it cool just a little bit. We don't want it melting all the ice immediately, right? So let it cool a little bit. Then in a shaker cup, or I use a mason jar, add your ice, your brown sugar syrup or brown sugar, and your vanilla. And then pour this and shake it up. and then pour your espresso shots over the ice and the syrup. I'm sorry. Put it in the mason jar, pour it over the ice and syrup, then shake it up. And then pour everything in another glass over ice. And then that is your iced coffee. And then top it with your milk of choice. Okay? I'm sorry. I'm going to say it again just to make sure because I fumbled that a little bit. So brew your espresso. Let it cool just a little bit. And then in your shaker cup or mason jar, which I use the mason jar, is perfectly fine, add your ice, brown sugar syrup, and your vanilla syrup. Pour that over ice and the syrup, and then shake it up for about 15 to 20 seconds. And then in a separate glass, put your ice in there, put new ice in there, and then pour it all into that glass. That's the glass you're going to be drinking out of. And then top it with your milk of choice. And then if you're being fancy, sprinkle it with your cinnamon or nutmeg. And I like to do either a cold foam or whipped cream too if I'm feeling real fancy. So that is your coffee for this week. And then this week's crochet segment for today's crochet corner. I am really excited. I have this mustard yellow yarn that I've been trying to figure out what to make with it. And I finally came across something that it was in mustard yellow already, so I didn't have to kind of wonder if it would look good. It was already looking good. So I came across a crochet waffle stitch halter top by Shyler Crochets, and I really hope I'm saying her name right. But the pattern is beginner friendly, super textured, and perfect for summer. And you know me, it's a halter in her tutorial, but she does say that you can lengthen it. So mine is gonna be full length all the way down, just because that's me. I like cozy over here. So, but you can leave it a halter if you want to. But in this tutorial, Shyler Crochets walks you through how to create the waffle stitch, which make sure you have good crochet hooks because you need a 4mm for it. And the crochet hooks that I have is fraying the mess out of my yarn. So I might have to get a new hook to keep going, but make sure you have a good one beforehand because my waffles are not looking as sharp and clear as I would like. So I'm actually going to frog it and start it over again. But that's a little tip for you. Make sure you have a good 4mm hook because that's what you're going to need. But she goes over how to create the waffle stitch, how to increase for the perfect fit, and even finishes it off with a gorgeous lace-up back design, which is why I really loved it. It is giving handmade hot girl summer, but make it cozy and custom. And so if you want to crochet along with me or just add another staple piece to your handmade collection, you can grab the written pattern from any of Shyler Crochet's shops, which will be linked in the show notes. And if you're feeling really ambitious, she has matching waffle stitch skirts, dresses, shorts, and sweaters. So you can build a whole wardrobe if you really want to. I'm debating whether I want to make a matching maxi skirt or go for some pants. She has pants too. I have never tried pants or shorts before, so I'm a little nervous. So I'm debating on which one I want to do, but I'm definitely going to make a match to the top. But I will keep y'all posted on how mine turns out. But so far, like I said, once I get a new 4mm hook, it's going to be amazing. So there is the crochet corner for this week. And happy stitching, friends. So now that we have our drinks and our yarn, and I'm actually, it's almost 5 o'clock, so I'm actually not drinking coffee right now. I'm drinking a wild cherry and cream Pepsi. But now that you have whatever it is that you're drinking and whatever it is that you're working on, let's get into today's stories. So like I said, today we are honoring 2 women whose lives, as well as the lives of one of their babies, were stolen far too soon. We are talking about Angelikque Sutton and Avis Banks. So we're going to start off by talking about Ashley Wade, who is the perpetrator in this story. Ashley Wade grew up in the Bronx and was a childhood acquaintance of Angelique Angel Sutton. We don't know a lot, or I wasn't able to find out a lot about her early life. But by 2015, 22-year-old Wade was living in the Wakefield section of the Bronx and was engaged in an elaborate deception. She pretended to be pregnant for months, fooling her boyfriend, family, and even a landlord with tales of an impending baby. So I know you are like, murder. I thought you weren't doing murder. I am going to do murder, but I try to only do it when it stems from some type of fraud or scam, which is how we get this story, because she's pretending and scamming about being pregnant. Wade went so far as to post a sonogram image, likely downloaded from the internet, and set up baby registries with a due date of November 16th, 2015. Neighbors later recounted they had, quote, no doubt she was expecting. Wade displayed baby clothes, diapers, and other preparations for a child that did not exist. Behind this facade, Wade's mental state was deteriorating. Reports suggest she may have experienced a hysterical pregnancy, developing false pregnancy symptoms, and then believing she had lost the baby. In reality, Wade had never been pregnant, but her childhood friend Angelikque Sutton was. Wade reconnected with Angelique on Facebook, bonding over their pregnancies, in quote, in the months leading up to November 2015. And I promise y'all we'll get into this later in the story. Unbeknownst to those around her, Wade had begun formulating a deadly plan to acquire a baby. Prosecutors later revealed that Wade had, quote, studied and planned how to kill and take the baby, indicating significant premeditation. She even told a friend she would name a daughter Genesis, spelled Jeneasis, the same name Angelique had chosen for her unborn girl. This disturbing buildup culminated in a tragic encounter on Angelique's wedding day. And now we're going to talk about our victim, Angelikque Sutton. Angelikque Sutton, known lovingly as Angel to friends and family, was a 22-year-old woman with a bright future. A recent graduate of St. John's University with a degree in criminal justice, she had her whole life ahead of her. Friends described Angelique as lighthearted and genuinely sweet, someone with a captivating laugh who could lift anyone's spirits. She was deeply loved by her family. Her father, William Sutton, is a bishop at a local church, and her mother is a pastor, and together they raised Angelique with strong faith and values. In late 2015, Angelique was 8 months pregnant with a baby girl she planned to name Genesis, and she was also preparing to marry the baby's father, Patrick Bradley, her fiancé, in a civil ceremony. November 20th, 2015 was meant to be a joyous day, Angelique's wedding day, and just weeks before her due date. But it tragically became the day her life was cut short. So now let's get into the crime. On Friday, November 20th, 2015, Angel, who we're not going to mistake for Angelique, Angel is Ashley Wade's boyfriend. Angel is out running errands, and it is in the afternoon when he gets a frantic call from his who he thinks to be pregnant girlfriend, who is days now past her due date. Because remember, she was telling people that the baby was due on November 16th, and we are now at November 20th. Mind you, November 20th is 6 days before Thanksgiving. So everyone is in, very high spirits, the holiday season. And so he's out running errands when Ashley calls him, like I said, very frantic, and says that she had been attacked and he needed to come home. So Angel, of course, dropped what he was doing and raced back to Ashley's apartment as quickly as he could. When he got there, Ashley was sitting outside on the steps holding the baby, and she is covered in blood. And so when Angel asks her what happens, she says that she was attacked and her attacker was still inside of the house. So Angel goes inside to see what's going on, but he walks into a house of horror. There is literally blood everywhere, smeared on the walls, on the floor, just everywhere. And he's walking through the house trying to find this attacker, and he doesn't see her until he gets to the bedroom. And there on the bed is the lifeless body of Angelikque. So, of course, once he realizes that Angelikque is not moving, he exits the apartment and calls 911. And he tells 911 that his girlfriend was attacked and they need help. So at that point, the paramedics and first responders come on scene and they see Ashley with the baby and blood on her. So they're trying to get them, medical attention. And then they go inside. And like I say, they see this horrible scene that they are not prepared for. So they are looking, like I said, they see there's blood everywhere, and it's way more blood than you would expect for any type of normal attack. So they're trying to piece together what exactly is happening. At this point, they think that the attacker is not the attacker. Who they think is the attacker, which is Angelikque, is dead. But unbeknownst to them, she is breathing and has a pulse. So they rush Angelikque to the hospital, and then they rush Ashley to a separate hospital. Officers are realizing that this scene is a lot. There's just blood everywhere. And so they're like, this can't be a random attack. So they ask Ashley about it, and she confirms that it indeed is not a random attack and that she knows her attacker. She identified her attacker as Angelikque Sutton and said that they were childhood friends from elementary school. And so they're trying to figure out what happened, what led up to Angelikque attacking Ashley, because it's not making sense. The level of carnage and destruction and the amount of blood that they're seeing, and the fact that Ashley or Angelique's face was marked in cuts, because the majority of the stab wounds and the cuts were to her face and neck. So they ask Ashley what happened. Now, before I get into Ashley's account of what happened, let's remember that November 20th, 2015 was supposed to be Angelique's wedding day. She's supposed to be marrying Patrick in a civil ceremony at the courthouse. So, where is Patrick in all of this? Unfortunately, Patrick is at the courthouse waiting on Angelikque. At this point in their lives, Angelikque and Patrick had been together for years. They started off as childhood friends, and then they eventually became more than that, became, boyfriend, girlfriend, and then eventually evolved into fiance and getting ready for marriage. And so at this point in their lives, Angelikque is not only preparing for a baby, she's also preparing for marriage. 'Cause I think at this point they had been together for 10 years. And so they're like, after 10 years, they didn't need the big wedding. They wanted to be financially responsible because they're also starting a family. So they said, we just need a courthouse civil ceremony and we're great. That's all we need. So typically, Angelique is an on time person. She had graduated from college. She was working the family business. She was very dependable, very reliable. Like I said, she grew up in church. She had a strong foundation. And so she was a very dependable person. So initially, Patrick is sitting there and he's irritated because he's like, of all the times for you to start being late, like this isn't one of them. Because if you don't know anything about civil ceremonies, they are appointment based. And so as time draws closer for their appointment and Angelique still isn't there, he's trying to call her and she's not answering. He's getting irritated. And then his irritation turns to concern because, again, this is not like Angelique. So at some point, he gets a phone call and he gets this like temporary sense of relief, like, okay, she's calling me, she's okay. But he looks down at his phone and it's not Angelique, it's actually his dad. And his dad is saying, there's been an accident. And so, but he's still not thinking it's that serious. He's like, okay, that makes sense. There's been an accident, she's going to be okay, right? But then by this point, despite all the efforts made by paramedics in the hospital, Angelique did not make it. So Patrick's father has unfortunately let him know that Angelique is gone. And so, of course, he's shocked because, what just happened. So he races to the hospital. And then when he gets to the hospital, he lets them know who he's looking for. And by this point, the police and the detectives are already there. So the nurse kind of looks at them and motions to Patrick. And so the detectives walk over, they introduce themselves, and they tell Patrick that Ashley claims that Angelique attacked her. And Patrick was like, absolutely not. That's not the type of person Angelique was. She would never do that. And so this is where they get into Ashley's account of what happened. So Ashley says that morning, she texted Angelique, excited to let her know that she had a gift for her. And so Angelique said that she would stop by on her way to the courthouse to grab the gift. So that's what she does. She makes a detour on her way to the courthouse to Ashley's. And, she's supposed to be there for a couple minutes, grab the gift, and then head to the courthouse. But when detectives start questioning Ashley about what's happening, because they're like, the pieces just aren't adding up, Ashley says that Angelique texted her out of the blue that day and said that she was outside already and wanted to come in. Ashley says that she was caught off guard by this, but she let Angelique in. And she says once Angelique comes in, everything changes. And she says Angelique becomes very aggressive and very hostile and starts accusing Ashley of bullying her back in elementary school. And she says that it just got very, very aggressive, very intense. And she says she was confused because she didn't understand why Angelique was bringing this up. She thought they were friends. She didn't know what was going on. And she said at some point she felt unsafe and she felt threatened. And so she just grabbed the first thing that she could. And she says that Angelique attacked her and she defended herself with the knife. She said at one point, Angelique had the knife, but she somehow got it away from her. And then once she got the knife, she just started, defending herself to try to get Angelique off of her. And when they're telling the story to Patrick, Patrick is saying, no, this doesn't make sense at all. That's just not who Angelique was. And so then he says something that the detectives did not know. He tells them that Angelique was 8.5, almost 9 months pregnant and set to be giving birth any day now. And he says, where is my baby? Did the baby make it? And at this point, they only know of one baby, which was the baby that Ashley said she had given birth to. So he says, if there's only one baby, that baby is mine. I want to see my baby. Where is my baby? Did the baby make it? And they says, well, there was a baby girl, but Ashley's claiming that she gave birth. And he looks at the detectives and he says, are y'all even sure that Ashley was even pregnant? So at this point, let's go back to the crime scene, because now they are really walking through Ashley's apartment. And like I said before, there was so much blood just everywhere. And now they're walking through and they see thrown out like garbage. They see a placenta and a uterus. And amongst that, they see other parts of flesh and body and just things that should be on the inside of the body. They're not on the inside. They're just out in different parts of the apartment, which makes sense because the medical examiner called the detectives and said, hey, we are doing this autopsy and her uterus and her placenta is missing and some other organs are missing. And so now they are connecting the dots like, okay, it's seeming like Angelique was not the attacker, but she was actually the victim and Ashley was the attacker. So they confront Ashley with this information, and Ashley sticks to her story of Angelique attacking her, but she says once she realized that Angelique was down, she says she felt like she had to save the baby. And so she took it upon herself to get the baby out. And then she says once Angel, her boyfriend, got there and saw the baby, he was like, we're going to be a family. It's okay. We'll get through this. And Ashley took that as that being the family that she's always wanted. Mind you, Angelique was slashed with a kitchen knife in the throat and stabbed repeatedly, as many as 50 times. And most of the blows, like I said, were to her face and neck. And her larynx was sliced so that she couldn't scream for help. And most importantly, Ashley made a point not to harm Angelique's abdomen, which is very much giving premeditated. And prosecutors noted that her grim intention was for Angelique to die, but for the baby to survive. So as Angelique lay gravely wounded and unable to fight back, Wade used a paring knife to cut open her abdomen and womb, brutally extracting the baby girl from her mother's body. In a grotesque irony, the infant Genesis was pulled from the womb moments after her mother was murdered. Angelikque, like I said, succumbed to her injuries almost immediately, even though they tried to save her life. So, now, Patrick is saying that Angelikque is pregnant. He's like, where's the baby? I want to see my baby. And initially the detectives are like, we're not saying that it is your baby. We're not saying it isn't. But at this point, Angel's saying that the baby is his. And so, if the baby is yours, we'll do what we can to let you see the baby as soon as we can. So at this point, like I said, the police know that Ashley is indeed the perpetrator. So she is taken into custody and taken to a mental facility to see, how she is and see if she's able to stay in trial. So The sheer brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through the community. Ashley Wade was promptly charged with second-degree murder, kidnapping, and weapons possession, and she underwent a psychiatric evaluation while held in custody at Elmhurst Hospital's secure ward. Over the next 2 years, prosecutors prepared a meticulous case, and Angelikque's family cared for baby Genesis, the lone bright spot in the tragedy. In late September 2017, Wade's murder trial began in Bronx Supreme Court. The prosecution laid out the unfathomable facts of the case in stark detail: how Wade had feigned pregnancy, lured her friend on her wedding day, and carried out a disturbing and gruesome premeditated murder to steal a baby. Graphic evidence was presented, including horrific crime scene photos, which was so disturbing that one juror fainted upon seeing them. Prosecutors highlighted how calculated the attack was, noting Wade's careful avoidance of the victim's belly. Quote, "She took a great deal of care to avoid the abdomen. The defendant needed Miss Sutton to die, and she needed Genesis to live," end quote, Assistant DA Meredith Holtzman told the jury. They also read aloud Wade's chilling confession in which she claimed, quote, "I couldn't have any more children die, so I rescued the baby. Holding her felt right, and I believed that the little girl was mine," end quote. This statement referred to Wade's delusion that she was, quote, saving Angelikque's baby because she had lost her own child, a notion prosecutors said was entirely fabricated. Wade's defense team did not dispute that she had killed Angelikque, but they urged jurors to consider her mental state. They argued that Ashley Wade was mentally disturbed and suffering an, quote, undetermined psychological illness at the time of the attack. In legal terms, the defense claimed Wade acted under, quote, extreme emotional disturbance, hoping to reduce the murder charge. They pointed to her apparent breakdown and delusional belief that the infant was truly hers as signs of a mind unhinged from reality. However, prosecutors countered that Wade's actions were too purposeful and coldly plotted to excuse. The jury agreed with the prosecution. After a nearly 2-week trial and just 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Ashley Wade guilty of second-degree murder and second-degree kidnapping in October 2017. The plea of extreme emotional disturbance was rejected outright by the jury, affirming that Wade bore full responsibility for the monstrous act. After her sentencing on November 15, 2017, Ashley Wade faced Angelikque Sutton's grieving family in court. Now 24 years old, Wade wept and apologized, saying, quote, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for hurting so many people. I wish I knew why." Her tearful remorse did little to sway the judge. Bronx Supreme Court Justice Margaret Clancy underscored the heinousness of Wade's actions, calling the killing, quote, carefully planned and, quote, beyond measure in its cruelty. Judge Clancy noted that baby Genesis, who was in the courtroom as a toddling, nearly 2-year-old, will grow up knowing that the day of her birth is forever tainted by her mother's murder. For that reason, and the betrayal involved in murdering a friend on her wedding day, the judge imposed the maximum penalty allowed. Wade was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. Specifically, 25 years to life for the murder and an additional consecutive 15 years for the kidnapping. As of this sentencing, Ashley Wade will not be eligible for parole until she has served at least 40 years, effectively keeping her behind bars until she is in her late 60s. The Bronx District Attorney noted that for such a, quote, disturbing and gruesome act, Wade will now spend much of her life behind bars, end quote. And justice has been served for Angelikque and her child. In the aftermath, Angelikque's family has been left to cherish and raise baby Genesis, who survived against all odds. Angelikque's father, Bishop William Sutton, called Genesis a, quote, testament to survival and hope, truly a miracle born of tragedy. The family renamed baby Genesis, who was Jenasis, to Genesis, like the Bible, signifying a new beginning, even as they mourn the unimaginable loss of Angelikque. Friends and relatives have kept Angelique's memory alive. A candlelit vigil held in her honor remembered her as an angel in life and prayed in gratitude for the survival of her daughter. I want to go back to because during the trial, they also laid out how premeditated this actually was. They went to Ashley's social media and her Facebook literally laid everything out. That's where they found the sonogram, that's where they found the baby registry, all of that. And they say that she purposefully sent a friend request to Angelikque with the intent of taking the baby. And she made the due date November 16th, specifically that because she knew that Angelikque was due on the 20th. And so Angelikque is there thinking that she's made a friend who is at the same point in life, experiencing pregnancy at the same time, due date is around the same time. They're hanging out, coffee dates, dinner dates, going to Applebee's. They're shopping for, motherhood, preparing for motherhood. They're genuinely, what Angelikque is thinking, bonding over this shared experience, when all along Ashley preyed on her and she targeted her and she reached out to her and lured her to essentially her death. And I want to say the reason why they gave her second degree is because text messages showed that Angelikque had reached out to Ashley saying that she wanted to come and get the gift. And Ashley actually told her that that wasn't a good day and that she was not in a good headspace. But Angelikque showed up anyway. And because Angelikque showed up anyway, when Ashley had told her that she was not in the right headspace, that essentially, if I'm understanding correctly, that is what eventually led to second degree instead of first degree. So now let's get into the broader context of Black maternal health and mental health. This heartbreaking case took place within a wider context of Black maternal health in America, highlighting several urgent issues that advocates emphasize, especially during Black Maternal Health Week, which is observed each April. While the circumstances of Angelikque Sutton's death are extraordinarily rare, Black women in the United States do face disproportionate risks in pregnancy and motherhood, from medical complications to violence. And then we're going to go over some key points and statistics that frame the broader context. Black maternal mortality disparities. Black women experience maternal mortality rates 3 to 4 times higher than white women in the U.S. And in Angelikque's case, the cause of death was homicide rather than medical complication, but it still counts as a pregnancy-associated death. Tragically, homicide is now recognized as a leading cause of death for pregnant and postpartum women in America, often exceeding deaths from obstetric issues like hemorrhage or hypertension. National studies have found that pregnant women are more likely to be murdered than die from pregnancy-related medical conditions, which is really why I felt so compelled to do these stories. This is an alarming fact that places Angelikque's story within a larger pattern. And then violence against pregnant women. A 2021 study and other research have shown that violence, often by intimate partners, is a significant threat during pregnancy. One study noted that from 2009 to 2019, 68% of pregnancy-related homicides involved firearms, and that Black women face a substantially higher risk of being killed while pregnant than their white or Hispanic counterparts. Many of these homicides are linked to domestic violence, though Angelikque's murder was at the hands of a female friend, an outlier case of fetal abduction, which is extremely rare. Still, the vulnerability of pregnant Black women to violence is a real public health concern. And as someone who is getting her master's in public health, this is something that's really close to my heart. Angelikque's murder starkly illustrates how the joy of impending motherhood can, in some worst-case scenarios, be shattered by violence. The case also spotlights mental health in the perinatal period, not for the victim, but for the perpetrator. Black women are twice as likely as white women to experience perinatal mental health conditions such as depression, anxiety, and psychosis, yet they are only half as likely to receive treatment for these issues. In general, about 40% of Black mothers report symptoms of maternal mental health conditions. Chronic stressors, including racism and trauma, contribute to these disparities. In Wade's situation, whatever mental illness she was suffering, possibly delusional disorder or pseudopsychosis, went undiagnosed and untreated. This lack of intervention can be partly attributed to the stigma and barriers Black women face in assessing mental health care, cultural pressures to appear as a strong Black woman, and distrust of the medical system often prevents seeking help. While Wade's violent actions are in no way representative of Black mothers, her case does underscore the importance of recognizing and treating severe mental health conditions early. Then, fetal abduction phenomenon. I didn't realize how big this was, and this goes beyond Black women. This is just across the board. Fetal abduction phenomenon is huge. Cases in which a woman kills a pregnant woman to steal her baby are exceptionally rare, but a few dozen instances have been documented in the United States over several years. I say it's huge because we're seeing it more and more often now. However, forensic analysis of such fetal abduction cases show common threads. Perpetrators are almost always women who either feigned a pregnancy or experienced a false pregnancy, and they may have underlying psychiatric disorders ranging from delusional disorders to personality disorders. Courts rarely accept these disorders as full defense, and perpetrators often face severe punishment, life in prison, or even a death penalty in some cases. The Ashley Wade case fits this pattern. Wade fabricated a pregnancy and possibly had a delusional belief that she was entitled to a baby, yet the legal system held her fully accountable. Understanding these warning signs could help prevent future tragedies. For example, communities can be vigilant if someone is falsely claiming pregnancy and take note of any strange or predatory behavior toward expectant mothers. In reflection, Angelikque Sutton's story is a heartbreaking convergence of issues that Black Maternal Health Week seeks to address: maternal mortality, albeit via homicide, the safety of Black women during pregnancy, and the impact of untreated mental health problems. It is a stark reminder that Black mothers not only face higher medical risks, but also become targets of violence. As Angelikque's friends at her vigil lamented, there were, quote, so many other ways for someone like Wade to seek a child, through adoption or other means, but instead, she chose an unfathomable act. Moving forward, advocates emphasize the need for better screening and support. Obstetric clinics are increasingly encouraged to screen pregnant women for signs of intimate partner violence and mental health struggles, both to protect them and to identify anyone who might pose a threat. Black maternal health organizations also call for culturally competent mental health care and community awareness to destigmatize seeking help. As the community remembers Angelikque Angel Sutton, a young woman who embodied joy and had a life full of promise, her legacy fuels a determination to improve outcomes for Black mothers and babies. Her surviving daughter, Genesis, symbolizes hope and resilience. By learning from this case and placing it in context, we honor Angelikque's memory and reaffirm the urgent mission of Black Maternal Health Week to ensure that Black women can thrive through pregnancy and motherhood without fear, with adequate support, and in good health. All the stats and stuff that I gave are going to be linked in my show notes. Like I say in my disclaimer, I need about 30 days to get them up there, but I really want y'all to dive into that because this, I don't know if you can tell by the way I'm reading it, but this is such a, for women, pregnancy is hard enough as it is. And to not be fully protected either by the healthcare system or by people you know, because there's such a pressure to become a mother or such a desire to become a mother, having to, in the back of your mind, second guess people who are coming around after you're pregnant because you don't know what their intentions are. It's just a whole nother level of anxiety that we don't need to put on pregnant women. We need to protect pregnant women, pregnant Black women at all costs. So that is the story of Angelikque Sutton. Now we're going to get into the murder of Avis Banks, jealousy, justice, and Black maternal vulnerability. So, who was Avis Banks? Avis Marie Banks was a 27-year-old Mississippi woman with a bright future ahead of her. Raised in Vicksburg, she graduated from Warren Central High School in 1997 and went on to earn a bachelor's degree from Alcorn State University in 2001. By 2006, Avis was working in early childhood education as an assistant director at a daycare center in the Jackson area. She was known as a smart and dedicated daycare provider, deeply passionate about her work and beloved by colleagues and children alike. In her personal life, Avis was engaged to marry her fiance, Keon Pittman, and the couple lived together in the suburban town of Ridgeland, Mississippi. Adding to her joy, Avis was 5 months pregnant with her first child, a baby boy due in a few months. Friends and family say she was thrilled about the upcoming wedding, just 2 months away, and eagerly anticipating motherhood. Tragically, these happy milestones would never be realized. Carla Hughes and the Fatal Affair. Carla Ann Hughes was a 25-year-old middle school teacher whose life seemed equally promising on the surface. Originally from Greenville, Mississippi, Hughes was well educated and ambitious. She had earned a Master of Education degree and was pursuing further graduate coursework in hopes of a doctorate. In 2006, Carla was working as a language arts teacher at Chastain Middle School in Jackson, where she was popular with students and respected by colleagues. It was at Chastain that Carla met Keon Pittman, who was not only a fellow teacher and basketball coach, but also Avis Banks' fiance. In the summer of 2006, Carla and Keon developed a close friendship that quickly turned into a clandestine romantic affair. Keon, then 31, began a, quote, sexual adventure with Carla, meeting her for secret liaisons at her townhouse and even sneaking off for weekend getaways. Which, sir, how do you even have time to do that? Like, you got a whole pregnant fiance and you're a teacher and you're a basketball coach and you got time to sneak away on the weekends? Okay, anyways. According to witnesses, Carla grew deeply attached to Keon, even introducing him to friends as her, quote, future husband. There's red flags all over this. I don't know if Keon just intentionally wasn't paying attention or if he didn't care, but sis is giving unhinged at the beginning. Like, she is showing him who she was, and he just was like, I'm just gonna get what I want. And okay. From the start, Keon made it known that he had no intentions of leaving Avis. You saying that, but your actions aren't matching it up. His bride-to-be, despite the affair. Avis was unaware of Keon's infidelity, and the couple continued planning their wedding. Carla, however, became increasingly jealous and emotionally invested. She frequently asked Keon if he would break off his engagement, only to be told that he would, quote, never happen. That's the point where he should have left her alone. But tension escalated in late November 2006. Over the Thanksgiving holiday, Keon traveled with Avis to visit her family. But at one point, he slipped away to meet Carla at a hotel. Like, sir, please be for real. You traveled with Avis to meet her family. They looking at you all in your phone. At one point, her family is like, yo, is he okay? And she's like, yeah, he's just, distracted or whatever. If you, no, you need to be fully present in front of her family. If I was Avis's family, I'd be like, yo, you need to just leave dude alone. Because clearly he's somewhere else. Let him be wherever he is. But he slipped away to meet Carla at a hotel. That encounter ended with an argument, leaving Carla angry when Keon wouldn't extend their time together. She like, you're not finna stay? And he like, nah, I gotta get back to my fiance. You knew what your position was, Carla. Like, why are you trying to be okay. A frustrated Carla ominously told him, quote, from this point on, things are going to change, end quote. before distancing herself over the next few days. Keon later testified that Carla had even threatened to drive to his house to expose the affair to Avis, and he only stopped her by threatening to call the police. And then at no point you thought to let Avis know what was happening. Okay. It was clear Carla was reaching a breaking point, and she realized Keon would not choose her. This volatile mix of passion and rejection set the stage for a horrific act driven by desperation and envy. This leads us to the brutal murder of Avis Banks. On the evening of November 29th, 2006, around, again, Thanksgiving, the lives of Avis Banks and her unborn child were cruelly cut short. After finishing her workday, Avis returned to the Ridgeland home she shared with Keon at around 5:50 to 6 p.m. What happened next was nothing short of horrifying. Sometime shortly after Avis arrived home, she was ambushed in her own garage. She was shot 4 times, struck in the leg, chest, and head, and also viciously stabbed at least 3 times in the face and neck with 1 slash across her throat. The attack was extremely violent. An autopsy would later reveal that 3 of the 4 gunshot wounds were fatal, while the stab wounds, though brutal, may have been inflicted after she was already dead. Avis's pants had been pulled down and a back door to the house had been kicked in, suggesting the killer tried to stage the scene as a sexual assault or burglary gone wrong. Nothing in the home was stolen, however, which immediately struck Avis's family as suspicious. It appeared the break-in was faked to cover up a targeted killing. It was Keon Pittman who discovered the gruesome scene. After basketball practice that night, around 8:45 p.m., Keon arrived home and opened the garage door, only to find Avis lying in a pool of blood next to her car. Panicked, he rushed to her side, trying desperately to rouse her, and then ran to a neighbor's house to have them call 911, which I don't understand why he didn't call himself, but okay. Responding officers found Keon hysterical, cradling Avis's lifeless body and screaming for help. There was nothing paramedics could do. Avis was already dead from her wounds, and her unborn baby boy had perished with her. His death officially ruled a homicide caused by his mother's murder. The brutal slaying of a young woman who was pregnant and weeks away from her wedding sent shockwaves through the community. Investigators now face the urgent question: who would do this to Avis and why? The investigation, a web of lies unraveled. Initially, suspicion often falls on the significant other in cases like this, and police did look hard at Keon Pittman. But Keon's alibi from the time of the murder was solid. He had been at Chastain Middle School coaching practice from about 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. with multiple witnesses and cell phone records confirming he was nowhere near the crime scene when Avis was killed. Moreover, investigators noted that while Keon's hand tested positive for tiny particles of gunshot residue, those could be explained by his contact with Avis's body while trying to help her. As Keon was tentatively cleared, attention shifted to another potential suspect, Carla Hughes, the other woman in this love triangle. Co-workers at the school informed police that Keon had several girlfriends on the side, including Carla. This tip, combined with the obvious personal nature of the crime, led detectives to question Carla just 2 days after the murder. And I want to say, Keon was cleared, which we said it already, but I believe when I watched the Snapped episode of this a few years ago, they were still looking at him because they said although he physically wasn't there, they think that he somehow put Carla up to it. Like he was like, he basically manipulated her into doing it. They never proved it, of course. He was never charged. They cleared him, but there was a lot of suspicion around whether Keon had planned this with Carla. But when first, and I should say allegedly, when first interviewed on December 1st, 2006, Carla lied to police, downplaying her relationship with Keon. Like, girl, they already know. You got witnesses. Everybody at the workplace know. Like, I don't understand why people lie about obvious stuff that the police already know. but she claimed she and Keon were just friends and denied any affair. Confronted with the fact that others knew about their romance, Carla eventually admitted to a sexual relationship with Keon, but she steadfastly denied having any weapon or involvement in the murder. This denial unraveled almost immediately. Investigators learned of Carla's cousin, Patrick Nash, just days before the murder. Carla had asked to borrow his handgun, quote, for protection due to alleged break-ins in her home. Nash was like, I don't want nothing to do with this. Like, let me just come here and tell y'all right now, you're going to trace this to me, but I ain't do it. So Nash testified that on November 26th, 3 days before the killing, he lent Carla a 5-shot Rossi .38 caliber revolver loaded with 5 bullets, along with a folding hunting knife about 3 to 4 inches long. He even showed her how to use the gun. Crucially, he gave her no extra ammunition beyond those 5 rounds. After Avis's murder, Carla behaved oddly. She phoned her cousin on the night of November 29th to casually mention that, quote, someone had killed Keon's girlfriend, a call that made Nash uneasy. Then, on the same day as her police interview, December 1st, Carla hurriedly returned the borrowed gun to her cousin, but now it was empty, with all 5 bullets missing. She did not return the knife at all. Nash, growing suspicious, relayed this information to law enforcement. When another relative directly asked Carla if the gun had been involved in Avis's murder, Carla could only shrug and hang her head, an apparent indication of guilt. Physical evidence from the crime scene also pointed to Carla. The killer had kicked in the back door, leaving shoe prints on the door's glass. During a search of Carla's house on December 10th, after she was initially arrested as an accessory, police seized a pair of women's size 10 tread-safe sneakers belonging to Carla. The tread pattern on those soles matched perfectly with the footprints left on the door of Avis's home. Investigators also found a photograph of Keon in Carla's bedroom and a handwritten note or poem with Keon's initials, underscoring the closeness of her relationship to the fiancé. Meanwhile, forensic testing on the .38 caliber revolver confirmed it was the murder weapon. Ballistics matched the bullets recovered from Avis's body to test shots fired from that gun. No shell casings were found at the scene, consistent with a revolver, which doesn't eject casings, and a bullet hole in the garage door indicated at least 1 round had been fired during the attack. The absence of those 5 bullets in the gun Carla returned was telling. Additionally, cell phone records placed Carla near the crime scene at the crucial time. A cell tower covering the Banks-Pittman neighborhood captured Carla's phone activity between about 5:37 p.m. and 6:04 p.m. that evening, precisely when Avis would have been arriving home and being attacked. In contrast, Keon's phone was pinging entirely in the area of the school and Carla's house until well after the murder timeframe. Taken together, the evidence was damning. On December 8, 2006, Carla Hughes' charges were upgraded from accessory to 2 counts of capital murder, 1 count for Avis and 1 for her unborn child, on the theory that Carla killed them during the commission of a burglary, the break-in. She was formally indicted in 2008, paving the way for a dramatic trial. So let's get into the trial and conviction. The trial of Carla Hughes began in early 2009 in Madison County, Mississippi, drawing extensive media coverage. Prosecutors painted Carla as a woman consumed by illicit passion and obsessed with eliminating her rival. Their motive was straightforward. Carla murdered Avis, quote, so she could be with Pittman and take Avis's place. In support of this motive, Keon Pittman took the stand and testified on October 6, 2009, recounting how he found Avis's body and acknowledging the affair with Carla. He described Carla's increasingly possessive behavior, including the time she had asked him to leave Avis and her habit of calling him her future husband, which he found unnerving. But you ain't found it unnerving enough to leave her alone or to let Avis know or to protect her from... Okay, but anyways. Keon emotionally broke down as he described discovering his fiancée slain emphasizing to jurors the devastation Carla's actions had wrought. Prosecutors bolstered their case with the forensic evidence. They showed that the .38 caliber revolver borrowed by Carla was indeed the murder weapon, and that Carla's shoes matched bloody footprints from the crime scene. They also presented cell tower data proving Carla was in the vicinity of the murder when it happened. The mountain of evidence established a clear narrative. Carla was the only person, aside from Avis herself, unaccounted for in that place and time, armed with the very gun and knife that inflicted the deadly wounds. The defense, in contrast, attempted a bold strategy: blame the boyfriend. Carla's attorneys portrayed Keon Pittman as a, quote, bona fide womanizer who might have had his own motives to harm Avis. They suggested that Keon didn't really want to be married with a child and floated the theory that he could have committed the murder and planted evidence to frame Carla. In a shocking twist, the defense even argued that Keon might have used Carla's own shoes to kick the door in and commit the crime, since he admitted he had, at times, borrowed her shoes, a claim Keon made, but only about borrowing them for yard work in the past. They also tried to explain away the incriminating cell phone data by claiming Carla had a friend in that neighborhood she could have been visiting. However, these arguments made little headway. Keon's rock-solid alibi, corroborated by multiple witnesses and phone records, made the theory that he slipped away to murder Avis and returned to coach practice implausible. Furthermore, which if I was Carla, I probably wouldn't have done it while Keon had such an alibi, unless she didn't want him to be. No, yeah, she probably didn't want him to be charged with it because she wanted to be with him. So she was probably giving him an alibi on purpose, thinking that they wouldn't trace it back to her. So never mind. Okay. So, furthermore, a defense witness who initially claimed Keon stepped out of the gym during practice was impeached with his prior statement to police that Keon was present the whole time. No credible evidence was produced to tie Keon to the crime, and the forensic links to Carla were overwhelming. For instance, Carla's shoes even had Avis's blood on them, according to crime reports. Carla Hughes did not testify in her own defense, a choice her attorneys likely made given the risk of cross-examination and the evidence against her. After about a week of testimony, the case went to the jury. On October 13th, 2009, the jury deliberated for 8 hours before returning a decisive verdict. Carla Hughes was found guilty on both counts of capital murder for the killing of Avis Banks and of her unborn child. The following day, during the sentencing phase, jurors had to decide whether to impose the death penalty or life in prison. They ultimately spared Hughes' life. The judge announced the jury's decision. For each count, Carla Hughes was served life in prison without the possibility of parole. In Mississippi, a capital murder conviction for killing a pregnant woman can carry the death penalty, but in this case, the jury opted for the maximum life sentence instead. The 2 life sentences were ordered to run concurrently at the same time. After the verdict, Hughes showed little emotion as the reality set in that she would spend the rest of her life behind bars. A judge denied her motion for a new trial in 2010, and in 2012, the Mississippi Supreme Court upheld the conviction on appeal, finding no errors in the trial. As of today, Carla Hughes remains incarcerated, serving her life term in a Mississippi prison. So, motive and background, right? So Carla Hughes' transformation to respected teacher to convicted murderer is a study in how lethal the combination of jealousy and obsession can become. Literally, by all accounts, Hughes had led a commendable life prior to this crime. She had no criminal history, she excelled academically, and she even had earned a graduate degree and was working in education, and she was working towards a doctorate degree. Those who knew her were literally shocked that she could be involved in such violence. Yet beneath the professional exterior, Carla developed an intense infatuation with Keon Pittman that veered into delusion. Prosecutors argued that Carla could not accept being, quote, the other woman, and saw Avis's pregnancy and impending marriage as an existential threat to her own romantic dreams. But I don't understand fully Carla because they say that Keon had several girlfriends. So I don't know if she thought that the other girlfriends weren't as serious because he was only engaged to Avis, but like, what was her plan? Like, I'm sure Keon wasn't planning on breaking up with any of the girlfriends. So I don't know if she fully processed Keon and where his brain was and what her position was. But testimony showed that Carla had told friends Keon was her destined husband, and she grew increasingly angry that he refused to leave Avis. This culminated in her fateful decision to eliminate her rival. As District Attorney Michael Guest summarized, quote, I believe that Carla felt that if she killed Avis, if Avis was removed from the equation, that would drive Keon into her arms, and she would be the only one standing at the altar one day with Keon. In Carla's mind, murdering the pregnant fiance was a twisted act of love that would clear the way for her own happily ever after. Carla's motive was rooted in classic fatal attraction and envy. It's notable that she plotted the murder shortly after that Thanksgiving weekend confrontation, when it truly hit her that Keon would not spend more time with her or cancel his wedding. She borrowed the gun and knife in advance, indicating premeditation. The ferocity of the attack on Avis, multiple gunshots, and stab wounds suggest a personal rage. Even the detail of Avis's pants being pulled down might have been an attempt by Carla to degrade her rival in death or mislead investigators about the nature of the crime. Throughout the trial, Carla never directly admitted guilt, and to this day, she has not publicly expressed remorse. However, the evidence speaks clearly to her guilty intent. In the end, Carla Hughes traded her once promising life for a prison cell, all in pursuit of a man who, by his own testimony, never intended to build a future with her. It's a cautionary tale of how a dangerous mix of passion, jealousy, and sense of entitlement can erupt into violence. And now we're gonna wrap this up with the broader context of violence against pregnant Black women. The murder of Avis Banks is a singular tragedy, but it sadly reflects a broader pattern of violence that disproportionately affects pregnant women, particularly Black women in America. Research in recent years has highlighted that homicide is one of the leading causes of death for pregnant and postpartum women in the United States. In fact, women in the U.S. who are expecting or who have recently given birth are more likely to be murdered than to die from pregnancy-related medical conditions like hemorrhage or hypertension, which I said before. Such homicides are often fueled by intimate partner violence or related domestic conflict. A shocking statistic from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, shows that around 1 in 3 women in the U.S. has experienced physical violence from an intimate partner in her lifetime, and pregnancy can be a trigger that exacerbates abusive situations. For Black women, the risks are even higher. One study cited in the medical journal BMJ found that Black women are about 3 times more likely to be killed by an intimate partner around the time of pregnancy compared to white women. Underlying factors include greater prevalence of intimate partner violence in some communities, the presence of firearms, and systemic issues that make it harder for Black women to seek help or be believed. And it's heavy on the or be believed. Like, believe Black women. Avis Banks was a young Black woman excitedly preparing for marriage and motherhood, yet her life was taken by someone in her intimate circle. While her case is unusual in that the perpetrator was her fiance's lover rather than the fiance himself, it still falls under the umbrella of pregnancy-associated femicide, the killing of a woman because she is pregnant or due to circumstances related to her pregnancy. Often, these crimes are motivated by the father of the baby not wanting the child or the responsibilities of a family, as seen in other cases, or by jealousy and control issues in the relationship. In Avis's case, jealousy from a romantic rival was the motive, but the common thread is that her pregnancy and relationship status put her at risk. The very fact that she was carrying Keon's child and about to marry him became the reason she was targeted by Carla. This illustrates a cruel reality. For Black women, maternal vulnerability isn't limited to health complications. It also includes exposure to lethal violence from those who are or who wish to be intimately connected to them. The use of a firearm in this crime, a 38 caliber revolver, also aligns with research showing that the majority of homicides of pregnant women involve guns. Easy access to firearms can turn domestic disputes or jealousy or jealous obsessions into rapid lethal encounters. So, the Black Maternal Health Week and the legacy of the case. Every year in mid April, advocates observe Black Maternal Health Week, a week long campaign, April 11th through 17th, founded by the Black Mamas Matter Alliance to shine a spotlight on the health and safety of Black mothers. So, I wanted to wrap up the month, like I said, with this episode. Even though I didn't get it out during the actual week, I thought it would still be fitting to get it out during the month. The campaign's focus is often on addressing racial disparities in maternal mortality, healthcare access, and outcomes. When we talk about Black maternal health, we must remember that health encompasses not only medical well being, but also physical safety. The story of Avis Banks is frequently invoked during discussion of Black maternal vulnerability because it underscores that danger can come not only from biased medical treatment, but also from violence and lack of protection. Avis was doing everything quote unquote right. She was educated, she had a stable job, a committed partner, and was committed, said lightly, partner, and was eagerly planning for her baby's birth. Yet she became a victim of an under recognized threat to Black maternal health: homicide. During Black Maternal Health Week, organizations and media often highlight that the U.S. faces a maternal mortality crisis, and for Black women, the crisis is especially acute. Homicide, as painful as it is to acknowledge, is part of that crisis. Lon and Keon, two public health researchers, call gun violence, quote, a health emergency for pregnant women, end quote, in the U.S., noting that these pregnancy-related homicides are preventable with proper interventions. Cases like Avis's drive home the need for broader awareness and early intervention in situations of intimate partner conflict or stalking during pregnancy. It is a sobering reminder that ensuring Black mothers' well-being involves addressing domestic violence and the societal conditions that allow it to fester. As one OBGYN put it, quote, pregnancy represents a particularly high-risk time for experiencing intimate partner violence, a lesson that rings true in this case. The murder of Avis Banks also highlights how multiple systems intersect: criminal justice, healthcare, and community support. Her family and community had to fight not only for justice in court, which they achieved when Carla Hughes was convicted, but also to raise awareness that Avis's life mattered and that her death was not just a tabloid tale of infidelity, but part of a larger pattern of violence against Black women. During Black Maternal Health Week, advocates often remember women like Avis alongside those who died of medical complications because both categories reflect the vulnerability of Black women during pregnancy. Avis's name now stands with too many others as a victim of intimate partner or jealousy-fueled violence. Her story serves as a clarion call that improving Black maternal health must include making sure Black women are safe from violence in their homes and relationships. It also reinforces the importance of recognizing warning signs. In hindsight, Carla Hughes' increasingly erratic and possessive behavior was a huge red flag. If more people around those involved had been aware of the risks, perhaps interventions could have been attempted. In the end, the case of Avis Banks is a heartbreaking example of how deadly the combination of love and jealousy can be, and it underscores an often overlooked aspect of maternal mortality in the Black community. As we honor Black Maternal Health Week and strive to protect Black mothers, we remember Avis, a bride-to-be and expectant mother whose life was stolen by violence, and we reaffirm the urgent need to support and safeguard Black women like her so that no more happily ever afters are cut short in such a tragic way. I'm going to list my sources too in the show notes, but take a deep breath because that was a lot. These stories aren't easy to tell, and as a Black woman who went through pregnancy twice, I'm actually proud of myself that I got through without crying. I did feel emotion attached to this. Like, even now that I'm done going through it, I'm very emotional because, like I said, we have to believe Black women, we have to protect Black women, and pregnancy is already stressful enough that we shouldn't have to worry about getting adequate health care, being protected, worrying about people taking advantage of us, being susceptible to crimes. Like, we shouldn't have to worry about any of that. We should just focus on bringing life into the world because that is hard enough as it is. But the stories aren't easy to tell or hear, but they matter. And they highlight a truth that's hard to face. Being a Black woman in America, especially during pregnancy, can come with risks that no one wants to talk about. So our final segment, Sip or Spill, today's hot take. There were red flags in both of these cases that were ignored or dismissed. So my question is, do we as a community do enough to believe women when they say something feels off? Or are we still telling them to be polite, to be quiet, to keep it together? Sip if you think these tragedies were preventable. Spill if you've ever ignored a red flag that you wish you hadn't. Let's talk about it. Thank you for joining me for this Black Maternal Health Week episode of Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet. If the story moved you, I hope you'll share it, and let's make sure Angelikque and Avis are never forgotten. To support the show, head to blkc3.com, where you can listen to the show. You can see our sponsors, get the iced coffee recipe. You can sign up to be a Patreon member. All those things. You can see my sources. All that is on my website. And I also wanted to say the summertime's coming up. May is summer. And so I'm excited to shift for the summer, not shift away from my layout, but I mean shift in terms of we're going to be doing a few series this summer, just to keep y'all on your toes, I guess, and give you something different. So May, we're getting back to the drama. This one was a little heavy, which I completely understand. But like I said, I thought it was important. But I'm trying to find, I don't want to misquote what May's theme is going to be. But I believe it's going to be, Okay, so May is going to be indicted while elected, when public service turns into private profit. So I will post the schedule of who I'm going over and when ahead of time, so you'll know what I'm talking about for the month of May. Hopefully I'll get this out to you before May comes, but just know that we're talking about elected officials and scams and frauds and crimes that they committed while in office. Like, this is where we get back into the juice and the vibe of episode 1, Ashley Grayson, that's coming back. And so I hope y'all keep rocking with me to hear about that. Like, every month is a different theme, but I just want you to know what May is, so it give y'all something to look forward to. But as always, this show is independently produced and mixed by Latarius Prince. It is researched and scripted and everything by me, Jasmine C. Prince. Latarius Prince also does the beats and the music. He has all the copyrights and all that. So I think that's it. Until next time, stay curious, stay cozy, and keep sipping. Bye.
Disclaimer. Great effort is made to ensure that all materials used in Black Coffee, Crime, and Crochet adhere to fair use guidelines. No copyright infringement is intended. If you are the copyright owner or represent the owner of any material used in this content and have concerns about its use, please contact me and I will promptly address the issue.